For day 25 of Scientific Wellbeing's 30-minute, 30-day project, I focused on a blind spot that I've noticed within psychedelics. And the focus is that 10% of the population is highly sensitive. In Elaine Aron's work and book, she labels this percentage HSP. You can do a quick search for highly sensitive person test, and within 5 minutes you will know if you are part of the 10% of the population that is uncommonly sensitive. If so, it's very worth your while to read about, and because one of your friends or lovers probably is, it's very valuable to read about as well. But one of the aspects of highly sensitive people who respond more to stimulation than the rest of the population is that everything from music to food to crowds to intense emotions to intuitive perception is louder, including psychedelics. And so one of the things that I've noticed in reading Terence McKenna and blogging around on the internet is there's no mention of that. And a highly sensitive person might need 1/3 of the dose that a non-highly sensitive person would need to achieve the same therapeutic value in areas of therapeutic LSD, work with MDMA for post-traumatic stress disorder, etc., etc. So that's one thing. The other thing is that while Terence McKenna and other people in the psychedelic community do say that psychedelics are not for everyone and that psychedelics are boundary-dissolving substances, what they don't say specifically is that trauma and PTSD is a boundary-creating experience. That when trauma is not resolved, healed, and resolved, and whereas HSP is relevant to 10% of our population, varying degrees of unresolved trauma and PTSD is relevant to 50% of the population to varying degrees. And the big issue is that we do not understand as a population how trauma works. One, we don't know that it is a biological method and mechanism, that the trauma response system is biological, not mental emotional primarily. Yes, there are thoughts and feelings, but the primary circuits to understand are in the body, unlike typical thoughts and feelings. Most people don't know that. Two, they don't know that talking about traumatic events can be re-traumatizing, whereas doing somatic work with the body to release can be healing. They don't know something the Greeks knew thousands of years ago when they were writing the Greek tragedies as an intuitive way of dealing with the fact that at that time the Greeks were literally fighting 7 battles at one time, which meant that every single person had a brother, mother, father, whatever, sister in the army, killed, raped, whatever. And so they were all dealing with massive traumas. And the Greek tragedies deal with the fact that it's not good to face trauma directly. The Greek mythology of Medusa, that to look directly at the face of Medusa was to be turned to stone, is an analogy for trauma. You don't look at it directly. You have to look indirectly through a mirror, through a metaphor. And that was the basis for creating and reenacting. This wasn't just put on by playwrights. This was performed by the entire population. The Greek tragedies are an example of this. And so most people don't know that trauma cannot be dealt with safely alone. We need help. Now, that can be spiritual help, that can be a very good friend, that can be a trusted therapist, but we need help to face the emotions of terror, shame, loneliness, and pain that are intense enough to activate the fight, flight, freeze biological matrix in the body. Now, the body and the psyche work to dissociate and create mental, emotional, physical walls to help us get through the day during traumatic events. The culture often suppresses the extreme physical fight, flight, freeze, release of these partitions within the psyche. And the trouble is, so it's kind of like the psyche during traumatic events creates a dam, and emotions build up behind the dam. And we've got to spend more and more energy, often exhausting ourselves, to maintain the suppressed dam of emotions, and they build up there. Now, what psychedelics do is they, depending on the dose and depending on the psychedelic and the dose, is they break down the dam. Now, if you don't have any built-up emotional stuff, a transcendent psychedelic experience in a sacred environment, in a traditional setting, can be a profound opening and beautiful kind of exploration. Because there's nothing resisting, there's nothing unconscious around your emotions, etc. However, if you've got deeply suppressed terror, shame, pain, loneliness from early childhood trauma, if you don't understand trauma, and if you do the equivalent of blowing up the Hoover Dam in an afternoon, you flood out the villages and the people downstream. You cause an enormous amount of, excessive force to just rush out there. And it's not directed. It needs to be kind of harnessed. And so having taken an interest in the fact that understanding consciousness is one of the most, it's one of the most important things we can do as human beings, to come to our own personal relationship with consciousness, however we define that, to whatever degree we experience that. And the science of exploring consciousness is, gifted with one of its most important tools, hampered by some of our laws, of psychoactive plants. Now, the trouble, though, is people are not being prepared and I wasn't prepared, with an understanding of trauma, its biological nature, and how that intersects with psychedelics. So for my project today, when I realized that, I've been kind of writing and different things about that, I decided to start a new YouTube channel, and called Safe Psychedelics, and I created my first 30-minute video and just detailed my assistant to kind of begin doing the logo banner and music and stuff, and we'll see where that grows from there. But the next thing that I did right after that was I was watching a video about 5-MeO-DMT, and of course, like all the psychedelic videos and things that I watch, I haven't heard the caution and preparation correlated with highly sensitive people, number one, and with PTSD and understanding of the emotional impact and the tension between the survival process in the psyche that is walling off terrifying emotions so that we can cope, so that we can get on with life, and the integrative aspect of psychedelics that is breaking down those walls, and the fact that we need to be prepared for the rush of emotion on the other side. We need to have skills, we need to have therapeutic support in one way or another. So that's the project for today, and thanks for watching.